Well, I will introduce myself because Mike didn't. My name is Allison Sheridan. I do a bunch of podcasts. My main podcast is called the NosillaCast. Hey, Brian, I'm presenting here.
Sorry, Allison.
You're supposed to be the audio help. That's good. So Mike mentioned that he said that the topic was create, and he just said that a lot of people think that they're only analytical, and I am only analytical. I'm an engineer, for crying out loud. I am convinced if you opened up my head, the whole right brain side would be completely empty, because I am only a logical thinker. And so I started trying to think, what kind of thing do I do that is creative? And I realized that I started creating a podcast. And I'm not gonna do what I said in the topic, of course, because that would just make Mike feel good if I talked about what I said I was gonna talk about. So I started thinking about what happened because on May 13th, 2005, I picked up a Samson CO1U mic and I plugged it into my PowerBook and started a podcast. And the main thing I want you to get out of this is that when you start creating something, you don't realize what you're actually creating. My first podcast, I tell you, hey, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to read you articles from the Wall Street Journal by Walter Mossberg about technology. That, of course, is not what happened. And it turned into a life of adventure that I never saw coming. And we're gonna go through this in a little different way. I thought, first of all, I would start by drawing you a diagram. And this would be really, really interesting if I did it this way. But then I thought, you know, I really would rather have used a mind map. This is actually an app called Draw.io that lets you draw diagrams on the web. Works better on Chrome than Safari. Great diagramming program, but it was maybe kind of boring. So I thought, what if we made a make your own adventure game? So I'm going to need a little bit of assistance. Is there a volunteer in the audience who could possibly help me?
Just a parboiled minute.
There's my able assistant.
This is a democracy.
Yeah.
People have the right to choose which adventure they want to go on. Is that right? Yeah. So you tell us what each one of these are very briefly, and then we will decide which one it's going to be.
All right, so you pick a picture, and I'm going to tell you the story of how we got from here to that ending condition. So the condition in the upper left, that's Rod Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son, talking on, I believe it was a Google Hangout, to the NosillaCastaways who couldn't come to a party at Macworld. The upper right I call community, and that ending photo was actually taken at Macstock. And it's the story of how the community got built. The bottom left is how did I end up in a screencast online staff photo. And the middle bottom is called Blindfolded. How did I end up doing a presentation at Macworld not being able to see? And in the bottom right, how did picking up that microphone turn into me at an eclipse in Chile just about a month ago?
Okay, so those are the choices. Where do we do this? First, anyone who identifies as male, please choose one of these. All at once. Got it. Okay, everyone who self-identifies as female. Everyone in between. Thank you for that. Okay, the people have spoken. And based on everything that I heard over here, I randomly tallied it. You can believe that if you want. And they have chosen S.
S.
Which is also the first initial of my last name. So I have some bias.
One of the interesting things about doing these talks is you have to figure out how to break up what you're going to say into a 20-minute chunk and into a 45-minute chunk. So I've done these different adventures, and if you come to the breakout session that's later on today, I think it's at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever. It's one of the last ones. And it'll be back here on the main stage. I will go through all of these, so don't worry. You'll get to hear all of these great adventures. I didn't catch a time when I started. Is there a time thing? Anybody can hold up signs? Tell me when I'm going too long? Nope. All right. I'll be on for about 45 minutes. This will be great. In the breakout session, I'm going to show you how I did what I'm going to do here. So I am actually going to very carefully see if I can move my mouse over here. So if I press on any one of these buttons, it's going to go through a different set of slides in my presentation where many of these slides actually repeat. So it's kind of tricky how I did this. It's kind of cool, and I'll show you how I did it in the breakout session. So that's where you'll actually learn something. This is just going to be fun. What did they decide on? S. All right. So that's a fun one. So I'm going to tap the S button. Now my job is to never touch the keyboard. If I just tap, I'm good. All right, so in 2006, I went to the very first Podcast Expo to meet other people who were into podcasting. And I met someone named Adam Christensen who does the Maccast. I almost said Mac Review Cast. And I also met a guy named Slough Halliton, and he's part of one of the other tracks if you stick through and see the next section when I do this again. So Adam and I got to meet each other, and which track am I on? I'm on an S. Got to always hit the right button. If I hit the wrong button, we're doomed. This whole thing falls apart. So because of Adam, he introduced me to the Mac Roundtable and invited me to be on this show. This was a show that ran for many years, first with 4 people, and then they expanded out to a greater group. And it's sort of pod-faded. I believe it's still up there. Adam still maintains the website. Met a lot of really wonderful people. One of the people I met online, just through voice, was a guy named Don McAllister. And I want S again. Got to keep track of what letter. I also met Tim Verporten of the Mac Review Cast, and unfortunately Tim is no longer with us, but he was one of the greatest people I've ever met in my lifetime, so I just like putting his chart up. It doesn't have anything to do with this story, but it was a boost to my show by meeting him, because I met him on the Mac Roundtable. I ended up getting a lot of my listeners from the Mac Review Cast, and people still tell me to this day that that's how they found my show. So I owe a lot to Tim, and he was a great, wonderful, wonderful human. So he gets to be in the slideshow. So now this is where things start to get kind of interesting. Adam went to the Apple store in San Diego to buy whatever the newest gadget was. It was a big, long line, and he's standing in line, and this young man comes up to him and says, "Oh my gosh, I love your podcast. It is so great. It is fantastic. Hi, my name's Rod Roddenberry. I'm Gene Roddenberry's son." So after Adam got up off the floor, right, he's like, "Oh my God, died and gone to heaven." I mean, those moments are the best. So he starts talking to this guy, and he says, Rod says, "You know what? We're rebooting the whole Star Trek movie series, and I'm going to do a special showing over at Catalina at the, what is it called? The Casino Theater over on Catalina Island. For those of you who are not from California, it's an island about 23 miles off the coast of Los Angeles." And he said, "You know what? Invite all of the Mac Roundtable podcasters. Invite them all." Now, David Sparks lives right next to the port where he could have gone. David Sparks did not go. Let's see, who else lived down there? Victor Cahiao used to live down there. He did not go. But one person did go with Steve and me, and that was Don McAllister. So Don flies from England. By the way, that's the Catalina Theater there. It is the worst place you can possibly see a movie, just telling you. The screen wasn't wide enough, so you remember during the first Star Trek reboot, they would say like what year it was in the upper left, and it would say Kansas or wherever he was from. That was completely cut off. There was no center channel, so when Uhura finally says her name, we didn't hear it. But it was really, really fun to see there. Nichelle Nichols was there, and George Takei was there. It was an amazing experience. But anyway, so Don goes, and we didn't know Don from Adam, in this case. So we knew. I didn't even plan that joke. That just worked out. So Don is going to come over, and we said, "Hey, why don't you stay with us?" So the adventure is starting to expand already. You can see this is getting exciting. So he comes over. And then he gets to know me, and he says he had done a couple of what was called the Macmania cruises. Unfortunately, these are not going on any longer because they were sponsored by Macworld, which was tragic in my opinion. But he convinced Captain Neil that a great speaker for the next Macmania would be Allison Sheridan. So when we get to the eclipse line, this chart's going to come back in because this plays into that plot. But he convinced me and convinced Captain Neil that I would be a good speaker. Now, what Don didn't tell me that Captain Neil was going to make me do, I thought he was doing me a big favor because I got a free cruise out of this. We got to go see an eclipse out off the coast of Australia. Steve got to come for free. It was an amazing, amazing experience. But he had just roped me into doing 8 90-minute unique talks. As one of my new friends, his name might be Andy, I think it was Andy, said, that's a curriculum, right? I mean, I'm good talking on my feet, I could talk a long time, but 8 times to do 90-minute completely unique talks, it was bananas. I didn't do anything from February to November. I literally, I needed new clothes. A friend of mine went to the store, bought me clothes, brought them home, let me try them on, took back what I didn't like. I had no time for 9 months to work on that. Is that 9? 11 minus 2? There we go. But anyway, I had a really, really good time doing it. Definitely didn't regret doing it, but boy, 90 minutes is a long time too. I figured out that the audience liked to talk too, so I just let them talk a bunch and stretched it out. So Don apparently thought that I was, if I could pull that off, I was worthy to become one of his employees. So I work for the man now. And he hired me to start doing video tutorials for him. And that, from a technical perspective, turned into something really, really enjoyable. I had to learn how to use ScreenFlow. I had to really learn how to use tools in depth. So I tend to use tools and kind of use like the top layer like everybody else, and you never learn anything more. When you have to do a tutorial though, you have to know everything about that tool. You have to poke every single button and figure out exactly how it works. And so I spent a lot of time learning new tools and having to up my game on audio and on video. JF Brissett is the editor for Screencast Online, and dang is that guy picky about audio. I mean, he puts Dave Hamilton to shame, that's all I'm saying. I mean, I've had to buy soundproof blankets for my office and all kinds of stuff because he can hear everything. And I'm like, I can't, oh wait, yeah, I can hear that tiny little thing. So that's been really cool because I've learned all kinds of new things. Now I'm working for a guy in England. I think that was an interesting adventure. So after he wrote me into that, he said, hey, would you start writing for the magazine now too? And so I write for the Screencast Online magazine that comes out once a month. This is not an ad for Screencast Online, but you can go to screencastonline.com, get a free 7-day trial. Anyway, I've had a lot of fun doing that and figuring out ways to do things like this one. This article was about putting MAMP and WordPress on my Mac to simulate running a website on my Mac, and that was really hard, a real mind bender how to record that. So sometimes you get in these meta situations where you're recording. That was a fun one. And because of that, so this takes a sideways turn here. At a Macworld conference in Expo, somehow Cards Against Humanity broke out. I blame Adam Christensen because he introduced me to that. It's the first time I met Kelly also. Kelly Gamont. And no, we're not going to tell those stories. So there were martinis involved. Yeah, great. That was embarrassing. So anyway, but in that Cards Against Humanity game, I also met a gentleman named Barry Falk. Everybody know Barry? Where's Barry? Barry's here. So I met Barry Falk. And then Barry Falk introduced me to this joker, Mike Potter, who's barely paying attention back there. And Mike Potter convinced me to speak at Macstock Expo. And that's how I ended up in the staff photo with Mike Schmidt, Frank Petrie, Wally Czerwinski, and Wendy Czerwinski last year. Ta-da! So if I press this H button, I should go back to the beginning. Okay, anybody got any idea how my time's going?
It's 9:27.
Yeah, what time did I start? Quarter after, right? I think, so I'm really supposed to do 20 minutes. I could do, should I do one more?
Yes.
Okay, so the 45 minutes isn't gonna go 45 minutes if I do one more. Mike, how's my time?
You got 15 minutes.
Okay, we'll just do one more. We'll speed things up because somebody else is going to run late later. All right, so how's my MC doing? Oh, and Kelly, can you pull my pants up because I'm wearing 2 sets of microphones here. I'm serious. I got mics. I'm mics on both sides. Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, pull back up. All right, got my assistant. Whew. Okay. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Based on all of that, it should be B for blind.
Oh, should not be seen? No, I don't want to do that one. Let's do the eclipse. All right, we heard the eclipse. Would you accept that as our final answer? All right. Okay. These are actually all based on time. We're not taking your opinion at all. Okay. So in 2006, I went to the Podcast Expo. So you remember, I picked up a microphone. 2006, I go to the Podcast Expo. And I meet Adam Christensen of the Macstock and also Slough Halliton, who you will see in a later show. By the way, you're going to catch on that these repeat, aren't you? But you're wondering, how did she do this with these little buttons? So then I went onto the Mac Roundtable, where I met I knew Adam Christensen. He got me on. And I met Don McAllister and a bunch of other cool people. Virtually met Don McAllister. And I met Tim Verpoorten of the Mac Reviewcast. You're going to keep hearing his name come up each time. And then Adam it turns out, see, I have to tell each story like it's brand new because it's a whole new thread, right? So Adam, it's amazing. He's at an Apple store, and this young man comes up to him and says, I love your podcast. Guess what? My name's Rod Roddenberry. I'm Gene Roddenberry. I'm Rod Roddenberry's son. So, did I say it backwards? I'm Rod Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son. I had it right the first time, and I corrected it. I should just tell it the rehearsed way and not try to be cute. So then he invites us all over to Catalina to go to a screening of the Star Trek movie. And let's see, David Sparks didn't go, and Adam actually didn't go either. I didn't tell you that. So anyway, so we get to meet Don, but we're not going to go that whole path. We're going to take a quick turn. Now I'm at Macworld, and I specifically searched out Gene McDonald. Everybody, Gene McDonald. Jean is laid up with a busted knee right now, which is very, very sad, is why she isn't here. So Jean worked for a company called Smile, and she did the support for Text Expander, and it was awesome. And I specifically went to go look her up at Macworld. Now that's important because Don gets me to go on to this Eclipse cruise where I'm going to be speaking. And he makes me do 8 90-minute speeches. That's a whole curriculum. Wait, what? How many? 8. 8 of them. 90 minutes. That's long. I didn't even get to buy my own clothes. That's the way the plot goes, right? So we're on the ship, and guess who's on the cruise as well? Gene McDonald. Now I didn't put this whole story in, but the couple next to her are Devon Polishek and Marianne Gary, 2 professors who live in New Zealand. Because of this cruise, we invited ourselves to their wedding in New Zealand. So that's like a whole nother story I could tell. The funny part was when we got there were 30 people at this wedding. We didn't invite ourselves to a 300-person wedding. We became like 8% of the wedding party, but they put us to work. I was the photographer and Steve was the videographer. It worked out, and they became friends for life. They actually come back into the plot if you go down if we ever go down the Blindfolded plot line. Remember, this is because I picked up a microphone, right? So Gene and Steve conspired when we found out about the Great American Eclipse that went across the country in 2017 that we should go to Oregon, meet up with Gene, and go see the eclipse. Now, there's a reason. Oh, wait a minute. I hope this works out. I can't remember what I did, but I can't go backwards. By the way, this only goes forward. If I miss a chart, if I screw up, I can't go back. So it could burn and crash and burn. So anyway, Gene convinces us to go see the eclipse, and we go see it, and it is absolutely amazing. If you ever get a chance to see a total eclipse, way different than a 98% eclipse. It is amazing. And there's one, oh, got some votes for that. 2024, it's actually going to be coming through close to here. Indiana, it's going to hit. It's going to go up through New York, from Texas up to New York. Definitely go see it. It's a trip of a lifetime, or 3 trips of a lifetime. So remember this chart. We saw this earlier, but this comes into the plot of how I end up in Chile. So Steve used to work for a woman named Sue Baumgarten, and when she retired, we kind of lost track of her. We were friends, but we didn't hang out or anything. And she decided she wanted to go see this eclipse that was going to be happening off the coast of Australia. So she was looking for a way to see the eclipse. She happened to find the MacMania brochure and saw that one of the speakers was Allison Sheridan. So she wrote to me and she said, hey, that's really cool you're speaking. We're actually not going to go on the cruise though. We're going to be in Australia, but we'll see the same eclipse, but not together. So that was the first time we didn't see an eclipse together. I can't back up, but the Oregon eclipse, she was also at the Oregon eclipse. She was also in Bend, Oregon, where we saw the eclipse. We got together for dinner and didn't watch the eclipse together. So she is an alumni of UCLA, as I am, I am as well. And she invited us, said, hey, you should go on the eclipse trip that UCLA is doing with UCLA alumni. And we did. And that's how I took that photo of a total eclipse of the sun. The sad part is she slipped a disc right before the eclipse and had to go home early. So that is the third eclipse we have not seen together. But anyway, think about what just happened. I picked up a microphone and I ended up at a total eclipse of the sun in Chile. You don't know what you're going to have when you create something. You just don't realize what it's going to turn into. This is not sitting and reading the Wall Street Journal into a microphone by myself. So I hope you guys will all come to my talk in this afternoon, where I will tell the rest of the stories. Thank you.
So awesome. No further ado, Allison Sheridan.
All right. Actually, maybe that should be one of those My Mac podcast game show things, right? One of the trivia items. Who's 4 hours older? All right, so we've already gone through a couple of these. What did we do? We did the Screencast Online one, and we did the Eclipse. So what do you guys want to see next? Blindfolded. All right. So this is a fun one. All right. Now Chuck just did a thing where he explained whatever you do. Or remember in his presentation on bad presentations, he said you can't show the cursor during a presentation. Well, he's wrong. I can. So let me press my little B button here. All right, so this actually starts down a slightly different path. It's going to cover back onto one of the other paths, and then it's going to divert again. I am going to go through these other couple of adventures, and then I'm going to get into how I did it. And we can play as long with that as you want to. In 2005, that was the first podcast expo I went to. That's before the one where I met Adam Christensen. I met a gentleman named Daryl Shandro. He's on the right. He did the Blind Access Journal out of, lives in Arizona someplace. The gentleman he's talking to is Adam Curry. Adam Curry and Dave Weiner are the inventors of podcasting. Adam Curry likes to call himself the podfather of podcasting. And from a technology standpoint, it's kind of interesting. RSS, really simple syndication, is a text file format that let you read blogs, get notifications of blogs. And these two guys figured out they could attach something to that RSS file. You could put in an attachment, which was just text pointing at the file someplace else. An audio file, a video file. You can actually do PDFs if you want to as attachments to a podcast if you want. So he was the guy that helped invent it and started one of the first podcasts. So anyway, but it was actually not important that I met Adam Curry. It was important that I met Daryl Shandro. You remember this picture, so I met Adam Christensen at the 2006 Podcast Expo, but I also met Slough Hallaton. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Hallaton, something like that. Anyway, so he goes by Slough, and he did a podcast as well, and we got to meet him I got to meet him at that show. And B. So Daryl convinced me at one point to go to something called the Csun Assistive Technology Conference. And this has turned into huge fun for Steve and me over the years. Back then I was going to these shows myself, but Steve goes with me now to everything. And at this particular one, the first one I went to, I met a woman named Susan Gerhardt. And Susan had written the first podcatcher for the visually impaired. So back then, iTunes didn't exist as a podcatching client. You had to get it through other kind of podcatchers. And so all these different people were writing podcatchers, and she had written one. As kind of a side story, the guy in the picture, I forget his last name, his first name's Harold. He convinced me to be on the advisory board of the computer science department for Santa Monica City College, which was huge fun. If you ever get asked to be on an advisory board, totally say yes, because all you do is you go like once a quarter and you pontificate and they think you're brilliant, and then you go home and you don't have to implement any of your ideas. It's like being a consultant. It's awesome. All right. So, by the way, the Csun Assistive Technology Conference, if you ever get a chance to go to it, it's somewhere in Southern California, but it moves around. Basically, it's a toy farm. It's a place full of really cool gadgets, really fun stuff for people who are blind, or visually impaired, deaf people. There's a guy that goes every year. He's got an implant in his brain that's taking signals and sending it to his optic nerve, so he can actually see kind of like an 8-bit thing right now. I think they did a firmware upgrade recently, and he sees 16-bit now. But they're working on all these cool ideas. There's dogs everywhere. There's things for people with autism. It's a really, really fun, interesting conference. Steve and I go every year. So what happened next? Oh, this is kind of fun. I ended up going to Blog World several times. So Podcast Expo kind of turned into Blog World and New Media Expo, and then it all fell apart because it was kind of trying to put snowboarders and skiers in a room together. It didn't work. So, but anyway, I did a presentation called How to Increase Your Audience Size Through Accessibility. And my idea was to trick people into coming and caring about accessibility, because I know everybody who does a blog or a podcast or anything, all you want is more people to watch and listen and read, right? That's what you're looking for. So I thought I could trick them into going if I said, why don't you get all these people who use assistive tech to start getting involved? So at the time, I put up this statistic. This is a screenshot, and if you read ahead, you'll see why it's funny. I pointed out that there were 314 million people who are visually impaired and 278 million people with moderate to profound hearing loss, and at that time, that was more people than there were on Facebook. Anybody remember, how many are on Facebook now? Twice as many billion as we are total humans, I think, right? 2.3 billion? Something like that, yeah. So anyway, at the time, my point though was, look at all the people that you're ignoring if you don't do things in an accessible way. That's a huge number. Even if you don't compare it to Facebook, you're thinking, 500-600 million people. Wouldn't you want to have those people as your audience members? One of the things that happened during that is when I was explaining about how if you have a visual only CAPTCHA, I mean, everybody hates CAPTCHAs, right? Those squirrely letters, everybody hates them, right? But if you put one of those on your website that doesn't have an audio component, then that's basically a do not enter sign to the blind or the visually impaired. And so I put this up, and at the end of my talk, this guy came up to me and he said, I got to tell you, Allison, you made a huge impact today. I work for Section 508 of the United States government. Section 508 is the law that says that all government websites must be accessible. He runs the website for Section 508, and he had 3 visual-only CAPTCHAs on the website. Now, while I felt great that I had a huge impact, I'm thinking, so who is training you for this job, Because if I know this one, it's an easy one. I don't know all the hard stuff, but I know the easy one. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Another interesting thing happened. A guy came up to me, and he was in a wheelchair, and he said, you talk all about the blind and the deaf. You never talk about people with motor impairments. And I said, what does the blind and the deaf talk to me? They tell me things. So if you want me to know this stuff, help teach me. And he said, okay, I will. And a few weeks later, I got a letter from him. His name was Patrick Hennebury, and we became pals, and we've been emailing ever since. And about, maybe 6 months ago, I said, you know what, Patrick, it's so crazy to think that in 2010, I did a presentation at Blog World. Because we met, we're still friends these years later, you're still teaching me stuff. And he says, I never went to Blog World Expo. I don't know where Patrick came from, and I don't know what happened to the guy I talked to, but I never made the connection. But Patrick teaches me a lot of stuff. So anyway. All right, where do we go from here? I am not going to read this slide to you, but I've saved it in this form because I want to make sure I never lose it. I got an email from a guy named James in the UK, and he wrote to me and explained to me that he really appreciated the fact that even though I do a podcast, I blog everything that I say. So there's a full-on blog post for every single one of the things I talk about. And he said, Allison, I sit in bed with my Mac Mini and a Braille reader, and I read your podcast because I'm not only blind, I'm also deaf. And that just floored me, that I was making a difference to somebody who, had so much trouble being able to communicate and understand things, and to be able to have this for him. I just said, I'm going to blog everything for the rest of my life. I'm even just to know that James might still be out there reading, I'm going to keep doing it. Another funny thing about I blog everything that I podcast is someone told me, I said, well, Allison, why do you put that up as a blog post? They might read and never listen. I said, yeah, that'd be terrible if they got the content the way they wanted it. You're right, I should stop. Some people just don't get it, So you remember I mentioned meeting Slough Hallaton at the second Podcast Expo with Adam Christensen. We ended up going to New York to visit Slough. Actually, I'll back up a little bit. You remember the 2 women I mentioned that were on the ship that we met with Gene McDonald and I said they were from New Zealand. We ended up going to their wedding. Well, they went to New York, and we'd never been to New York, so we thought, well, it'd be easier to fly to New York to see them than to pay to fly to New Zealand again. So we actually went to New York just to meet with people from New Zealand, and we met up with Slough. This is Slough running his studio. He's a musician, and he runs a recording studio. He's completely blind. You can see he's running Logic up above, and I believe at the time it was Mac OS or OS 8. Yeah, I think is what he's running. If maybe somebody can identify what that looks like. But it was because they hadn't yet made the new version accessible, so he couldn't go to OS 10. He has since then gone to OS 10 finally. But he's actually working right here. He's live mixing a song called If Every Day Were Christmas. It is a fabulous, fabulous song. It's the first pod-safe music song for Christmas. Adam Curry tricked him into recording this with a whole bunch of different recording artists. So it's kind of like one of those We Are the World sort of things with all these different artists singing it. And he has re-released it, mixed it himself, done all of the recording with a bunch of violinists and all those other violin-looking instruments that are different sizes, violas, things like that. Anyway, that was a really, really cool experience. So write that down. If Every Day Were Christmas, everybody go buy it. It's $1. It's the best Christmas song. I just love it. So, got to get off the B. So over time, blind people just kept writing to me. Just over and over and over again. All these people just, it was like I was collecting them as friends. I don't know where most of them came from, but just by talking about accessibility once in a while on the show, I started to get more and more influence from people who are visually impaired. Like I said, they kept talking to me, and it made Slough's name a little bit bigger because of what he did to me here. I started talking on the show about how it would be cool to start learning voiceover. So I started teaching myself little tricks. Oh, just to explain, voiceover is the tool, the accessibility tool that allows an iPhone to speak out loud to the people with visual impairments. And on the phone, it's really, really easy to use voiceover. You turn it on and you have to learn a couple of different gestures, there's a few things, but to become rudimentary capable in it, it's not too bad. So I got this idea. I said, what if I tried to do a presentation blindfolded? What if I could do that? If I could do it? So I turned in a tech talk to Macworld and unfortunately got accepted to do that. And I wrote to all these people, and a whole bunch of them, Scott Howell in particular, Keith Watson, Jeff Bishop, Buddy Brannon, I know we're all big help, and Bill Holton. I'm not sure, I think Daryl might have helped a little bit, but I remember distinctly talking to Slough and saying, well, how hard is it to learn this? And he goes, oh, it's easy. It's not going to be hard at all. So a couple of months later, I've been working on this, trying to learn how to use it, and I called him up and I said, this is really hard. And he just starts laughing. And he says, oh, I know it's really, really hard, but I figured if I told you that, you wouldn't try to do it. Unbelievable. That guy's such a crazy man. But in the end, I did a presentation blindfolded at Macworld. I used the phone first. I think I created a calendar invite. I invited Katie Floyd to something, and then I switched over to the Mac, and I started doing the thing on the Mac. And they always tell you, never, ever, ever change your presentation at the last minute, right? Don't ever do that. So I changed my presentation at the last minute. But all I did was I took it out of a folder and I put it on my desktop thinking it would be easier to get to. I wouldn't be fumbling around to find it, right? Somehow, I don't really know how this happened, but I got it stuck to my cursor, and it was like I was walking around like this. I had it stuck to, I couldn't get off of it. And I didn't know what was happening either, so I didn't know why it was doing that to me, why I couldn't let go of it. And the audience is just yelling out instructions and trying to tell me what's going on. Eventually, I started accidentally opening folders on my Mac, and Steve's panicking because, you know, I might pull up like a medical report or our taxes or something, because I have no idea. I'm just flailing at this point. So I finally pulled it up and I peeled a little bit, and I had to peek. But other than that, I did not. I did actually pull it off. And a lot of people said that, you know, I was disappointed because I had flawless execution ahead of time, and they said no, it was good because it showed us how incredibly hard this actually is. That it might sound like, oh, you just use voiceover and everything's fine, but the Mac is hard, the iPhone is very, very easy. So that is the end of the blind. Oh, one more thing on the blindfolded story. McAllister had a presentation shortly after mine, and he got up and he said, you know, I was really nervous about doing my presentation. But I just watched Allison do one blindfolded, and nothing's going to be harder than that. All right. Blindfold. Did we do Rod? We did Rod, right? No, we didn't do Rod. Well, you know most of Rod already, so we'll do that one. We'll save community for last. So I met this guy named Adam Christensen with Slough Halliton at Podcast Expo 2006, and I just clicked the wrong button. So if you click the wrong button, there's no way to get out. Wait, well, I could do it a really weird way. If I just stay on the B, there we go. Okay, R. Because you'll see the curtain pulled back too soon. All right, where's an R? There we go. All right, so we meet Adam there. And Adam gets me on the Mac Roundtable. And I meet Tim Verpoorten. And then, did I do it again? Oh no, but that's okay. It works out because I'm on the R. I think that's okay. If I pay attention, Allison. Okay, so stay on the R. So we meet Rod there, or he meets Rod. Rod convinces us to go to Catalina. And then this is me getting to interview Rod Roddenberry. He was the coolest guy. So it's Don and Steve and me, and we stay in a hotel, and in the morning we wake up and we realize we're here as his guests, but we have no idea what he looks like. We just know Gene Roddenberry's son invited us. So what if we run into him on the street and we walk right past him? I mean, we've got to find out who he is. So we went online and we found a video, back then it was called a vlog that he had done. And so we got to see what he looked like, and we're like, okay, now we know what he looked like. We walked out of the hotel and we were standing on the corner, and I suddenly hear someone say, "Oh man, it's weird to hear you outside of my head and not into you whispering in my ears." And it was Rod Roddenberry. Talk about a died and gone to heaven moment. Rod Roddenberry listened to my show. It was very, very cool. So when I asked him, I said, "Would you sit for an interview?" He said, "Oh, really? I could be on your show?" Oh my gosh, I love him. He is the greatest guy. So then I went to a Macworld Expo where a game of Cards Against Humanity broke out, and there were martinis. And then I met a guy named Barry Falk. And now we take a turn. Now at Macworld Expo, Steve and I decided to start throwing a party for the NosillaCastaways. And Steve is very excited about the banner that we got. This is going to get into the community thing a little bit, but one of the fans of my show made that for us, had it sent to us, a guy named George from Tulsa. He sends very odd gifts to us since then, but he actually had that banner made for us for the party. And then we had these scary looking bouncers. And then at one of the parties, we put up Steve walked around with a laptop and got people to get on a Google Hangout with people who couldn't come to the party. So NosillaCastaways who really wanted to be there but couldn't be there. And this is Rod. Rod spent about 45 minutes talking to people that didn't get to be there. And we were just talking to one of the guys, Kevin, big in Virginia. He said, "I distinctly remember that being like such a crazy cool moment that I got to talk to Rod Roddenberry." So anyway, that was Rod is the real deal. He left all of a sudden and didn't say goodbye, and I was kind of like, oh, well, okay, well, that was cool. He did all this great stuff. About 10 minutes later, he comes back and goes, "Oh my gosh, Allison, I forgot to say thank you. This is so great. I can't believe you did this." And I said, "Wow, your mama raised you right." And he says, "No, but my babysitters did." So I always say my babysitter raised my children, so I think it's all fair. All right, let's go through this last one here. So I call this one community. In May of 2005, I picked up a microphone and I started recording. And I recorded 4 episodes, and I did what's in the business known as pod fading. I didn't make any episodes for a couple of weeks. And someone named Jumbo Shrimp, his real name is Neil, he wrote to me and he said, "Hey, where's the podcast?" And that was the first time that I knew there was someone on the other side. You know, I was talking into a mic and I didn't know anybody was really there. But the minute I got that feedback, I was like, "Oh, I'll do some more." You know, it's like a little bit of adrenaline. And so that was kind of a big turning point for me, that really got things started. By the way, this is my original logo. Pretty nice, huh? In September of 2006, a gentleman named Bart Bouchat sent in a little bit of a review of a piece of software, and he ended it by saying, I'm going back and I'm listening to all the back shows and I'm really enjoying it, keep up the good work. That really changed the show, that this young man did this, because where we are today is I've spawned 4 more podcasts, all because of him. In the upright, that's Taming the Terminal. My main show is the NosillaCast, by the way. I don't think I even ever specifically said that, but Taming the Terminal is a 32-part series that Bart did teaching how to use the terminal on a Mac. It's a great series. It's bite-sized chunks. It's kind of evergreen. It's finished, but it's out there for anybody who has always wanted to learn the terminal. He walks us all the way through the whole thing and how to use it. Very cool. In the bottom left, I need to work on the graphics there. That's Programming by Stealth. We're on something like 70, 80 episodes of that. He's teaching the audience to do to learn to be programmers. We started with HTML and CSS and went into JavaScript, and we're learning mustaches and Bootstrap and all these other cool things. And then I have this show, Chit Chat Across the Pond, that used to be kind of lighter conversations, but we split it off into Chit Chat Across the Pond Light and the heavier stuff, the propeller beanie stuff that Bart's involved in. So just because he wrote that one email, I sucked him into my madness. And then he multiplied it. Talking about community, one of the things that changed a lot of stuff was when I had a community where other people could talk to each other. So I started a Google Plus community, and all of a sudden the people were talking to each other, not just to me. And it was kind of nice because people asked me how to fix things, how to do things, and it's kind of a heavy load you have to fix everybody's problems. All of a sudden somebody would post something, I don't know the answer, somebody else answers. So the Google Plus community really started to take off. But then the giant sucking sound of Facebook pulled me in, and I sort of felt like resistance is futile, you've got to do it. And so I started a Facebook community, and that sort of bifurcated the community, which was unfortunate because a lot of people will not go into Facebook in my community. In particular, Bart won't go into Facebook, so he stayed in Google+. But then Google Plus got killed, so we had to find a new place to go, and I knew I wouldn't get those people into there, so I moved it over to Slack. And when we did that, things really picked up a bunch. I think Google Plus dying, people weren't there, and a lot of people use Slack for other business reasons. One of the reasons I did Facebook is because people are already there, and you kind of got to go where the audience is. But the Facebook, I'll get it yet, the Slack community in particular, Bart does a big segment on security every other week called Security Bits. This is where they talk to each other about security issues. This is where they talk about programming by stealth. So this has taken on a much bigger life than Google Plus ever had. But it's just so cool that these people are in there talking to each other and helping each other. That community was still kind of growing, and that adventure, I don't know where this is going to go because this just started. This could turn into, I don't know, I might be on Mars next time I talk to you. You don't know. I wanted to show this picture. This was one of the early times we did a Skype call from that same party, from the NosillaCastaways party. That's Bart getting to meet the NosillaCastaways for the first time. They had never seen him before, so that was kind of cool. Now remember, by the way, Bart lives in Ireland, and I have never met him until later. So this is a tweet up with Don McAllister in Liverpool, where I got to meet a bunch of people. We had a little tweet up, got to meet some friends, and because we were going to Liverpool, we went to Ireland, and this is the first official Chit Chat Across the Pond in person. I think Steve staged that photo. So that was amazing, right? I picked up a microphone and I ended up in Ireland meeting somebody, one of my best friends. I mean, I'd known him for more than 10 years by the time I met him in person. And I remember thinking, you walk different than I thought you would. We were always on a microphone. So then something huge happened. A young man, I think he was around 18 at the time, named Ben McRedmond, said, you should do a live show. So he started out, this is a very blurry screenshot of his screen using Stickam and IRC chat, and we routed my audio through to VLC and to iTunes so you could hear me live. And IRC was for the chat. But this was starting to become something much bigger, and this continues to grow. Eventually we moved over to Wirecast, which was a third-party tool, and Justin.tv. And just recently, we switched over to a program from Boinks called Mimo Live. This is actually a screenshot of Steve's screen. One of the big things we were able to start doing is, while I'm doing the live show, I was also juggling everything else. I was running the video, I was running the chat room, I was reflecting my screen. All these sources were coming from me, and I was just juggling everything, and it was really, really hard. So we made it really hard on Steve now. We had a 27-inch iMac with 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM, and I'm on a laptop doing all this stuff. So we moved a lot of the power-hungry stuff over to his machine, and that really helped out a lot. And so now we have, we're using Discord as the chat, and we do this every Sunday night at 5 o'clock Pacific time, except this week when I'm here and next week when I'm in Canada, we will continue to do this. But it's really, really kind of fun. And this was a big, big community change. As this grew, all of a sudden I had people who were my friends because we got together on Sunday night. And I read an article about how our parents used to play bridge Friday nights and have cocktails, and they'd sing afterwards. And I don't know if your parents did this, but my parents were crazy about it. And it wasn't about bridge. It was about getting together on Friday night, right? It was getting together and hanging out with your friends. We have a community that gets together every Sunday night, and when we're not there, they're like, well, what the heck are we supposed to do on Sunday night now? Frank Petrie sitting right here. Rick Carter, where's Rick here? He's here. Oh, he'd be in trouble if he wasn't here. Okay, there he is. I mean, they're always in the chat room, and I know them as good friends now because I see them in the chat room. And I mean, I think we probably knew Frank before. I don't know. Might have. Okay. Okay, on one of the panels, all right. So we ended up we get to know these people, like this gentleman I mentioned, Kevin, big in Virginia. I know his children's names. I mean, I know, where his daughter's going to school. I've seen pictures of her going to the prom. And Sandy, so Kevin is Steve's wingman. His job is to stop me from yelling at Steve and doing mean things to Steve. So like people try to get me to not be mean to Chuck. But then Sandy stepped in as my wing woman, and she's the one in charge of making everybody be nice to me and stopping Kevin from being nice to me. But I mean, there's all these dumb little private jokes. Like Kevin was a very large man at one time. He no longer is. But he'd have to move so 3 people could get a seat, is what he would say. And then he'd be in the back throwing spitballs. But there's just it's family fun, There's kids in there. Actually, TJ's here. We met TJ, the very young man who's, oh, there he is. TJ's in the back. I almost there. TJ waving to everybody. TJ's here because of the live show, because of that. I mean, to get to meet somebody like TJ in real life and geek out with them, it's so cool. So you don't know what's going to happen when you just start something creative like this. This is my childhood toy, Mipples, and that's with an M, as in Mike, just so you know. So I say that clearly. Mipples is his name. He ended up kidnapped by Kevin. That's Kevin in the background holding on to Mipples. He kidnapped him and sent ransom notes to me, and he held him until I bought Steve a new 27-inch iMac. I didn't put the picture in here because it's embarrassing for Steve, but I got this picture of him going like this with his new iMac. It was delightful. So, you don't know what's going to happen. These crazy things happen in your life when you do something more interesting like this. And I took this photo, I think this is from last year, and just collected people together that we got to know because of community, right? Because we're here. We've gotten to know, just coming to this, you're meeting people that you're going to be friends with forever, that you're going to continue to commune with, just because we've collected over this odd thing, these things made by Apple. So, with that is the last of the make your own adventure game thing. So now I can show you how I did it. Do you guys want to see that? Yeah. All right, so I've got 2 different ways I can do it. I'll start with, got to exit out of here. And I'm going to slide this over. We'll let you see. Chuck says, never jump out of your presentation. So we're going to slide out here. So you won't be able to read this very well. Actually, let me see if I control scroll, does this work? Yeah. Okay. So this is not the slide sorter. This is, where's view? So this is show outline. I don't know why, but you can name things in the outline that never show up on the slides. Like you notice for the most part, I just have pictures on each slide, right? I've got a couple of slides that are a bunch of words, but mostly it's just pictures. So let me, I'm going to open another presentation. No. We're going to open, oh, actually, I'll probably open recent. That'd probably be the easiest way here. I made a little fake one. You know what I need to do? I need to mirror this darn screen. It's really hard doing this by remote control. Displays. And where's mirror? Come on, arrangement. There you go. There it is. Okay, now I can look this way. That'll be easier. Okay, let's quit this. So I have another presentation that I will show you how I did this. Demo linked slides. Let me go full screen on this. So actually, close your eyes for a second. I thought I left this in an unfinished state here. There we go. Let's see. These are clean. These are clean. Yeah. No, get rid of that. Remove. Pretend you didn't see any of that. So I've got on my first slide, I've got two buttons here, button 1 and button 2. And what I want to have happen is if I hit button 1, I want to arrive on this slide that says arrive from button 1. And demo link slides here, if I go button 2, I want to end up over here on arrive from button 2. And on both of these slides, I want to be able to go back home, which is what my final H is. That was to go home. So it turns out if you click on anything, it can be words, it can be text, it can be a button, it can be a graphic, a picture, anything. I chose to make buttons. And you go up to Format, Add Link, Slide. Let me zoom up so you can see that. So you go up to Slide. You can add a link to a slide. You'll notice it says Command K. I got real good at Command K. But I click on that, and we have a choice of different things we can go to, but one of them is slide, and then you can say next previous slide. I don't know why you'd need that, but I went to slide, and I said, okay, here, I want to go to slide 2, and then I can either remove it, you just saw me do that, but I can actually go to slide to test it. Okay, so that one works. Now I want to do a Command K, and here I can say I want to go back to slide 1. And then on this one, I'm going to Command K. And you don't have to use the pull down. I was using the pull down, but there's 50 slides, so that would have gotten real long and hard. So I could look in the left sidebar, and you see how I can see it's 1, 2, 3 in the left sidebar. I can just say I want to go to 3 and go to slide. So now if I start here, and we'll go into slideshow. If I click on button 1, that takes me to the slide that says from button 1. I can go home, go to button 2, arrive from button 2. And I lost my cursor.
You didn't make.
Oh, I didn't make that one? Oh, maybe that's why you could see my cursor, because I had those buttons. Ooh, Chuck might be right. Don't tell him. All right, let's go back here. Let's try that. So button 2, yeah, that is why. That's interesting. Okay, so there is a way to make your cursor show if you want to. So I can go back home, and that's back to the beginning. Isn't that cool? Thank you. So the other thing I did, when I went into here, and I don't think you can increase the font size, so let me bring this up over. So the reason I wanted to point out that I could type anything I wanted was I put numbers and letters here. So this, I could look and say, okay, R1 to R2 to R3, this is the set of rod slides. And the S ones, that's the screencast online ones, and these are the ones for the Eclipse. And you can see it'll jump around, and some of them go backwards. You see things jumping around and going all over. I could write those in, so I could, okay, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here. And then I put a little hint for myself of what was that slide about. Because when you first do that, there's nothing there. It's just empty. It just says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was able to put those in, and then I could look at it. And when I watched here, while I was building the slide, say I was on this one, I could say, okay, do I want to go to slide 5? Let me check. So I'm starting from the choose page. Slide 5 would be this one. Is that S1? Yes. Okay, that's the one I want to go to. And that's how I kept them all in order. And then I practiced it and got rid of all the mistakes over and over and over again. One of the most interesting things I discovered was how unfragile this is. So let's go here and go back to this one. Let's say I wanted to insert a slide. Oh, here's a really weird thing I discovered. If you're in here and you're editing the text, my cursor is halfway in between linked and slides. If I hit enter, it splits that text and creates another slide. I have no idea why it does that. But the nice thing is I can just be at the end of a line and I can hit enter and I've just created another slide. So let's call this, I always call things boogers, just because that way I can find the thing I made. And we'll call that home. Let's see, we'll call that bugs. And get out of that. So now let's say I wanted to change this button. I wanted to go, let's see, is that gonna really, I gotta make a third button. Let's duplicate this and throw another button up here. We'll put button 3. And we'll have that one go, let's go, this one we're gonna say we wanna go backwards. Instead of going to home, we're gonna go to button 3. Actually, we're gonna go to boogers. So we'll go to 2. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not really paying attention. Go to slide. All right, so that one will go there. I'm not sure I illustrated this right, but basically what I wanted to show you, and I didn't really do it right, was you can rearrange slides and you can pull a slide out, and any slide that was trying to go there would suddenly lose its little arrow. So the arrow's gone, but everything coming after that would stay in order. They would stay cohesive. So I could slide in a new slide and say, okay, you go to here, and all the other ones would ripple down and keep track. I can rearrange the slides, move them up and down, and they all stayed. It was very easy. I'd go, oh, I don't want to change this, but okay, I will. And then it always turned out to be much easier than I thought. The only problem I had was because I created this elaborate numbering scheme, I had to go reorder those. Go R1 becomes R2, R2 becomes R3, R3 becomes R4. So that was a little tedious, but the software doing the insertions worked really well. So anyway, that's all I wanted to teach you. Oh yeah, questions?
Can you copy and paste the buttons between slides and they keep the targets correct?
You can you copy and paste the buttons and keep the targets correct? Yes, you can. I didn't do a lot of that because I didn't want them going to the same place, but that is kind of how I did it. The one thing I had trouble with, and Chuck talked about how annoying it is when people's slides don't, when things move around that should stay still from slide to slide. I had trouble keeping these in the consistent place. Like if you watch, let me bring this down so you don't need to see the speaker notes here. When I go from here to here, see the buttons moving? And I asked him in the thing, like, how could I possibly keep those straight? Because I was copying and pasting, but the same buttons aren't on every slide. And he said, well, just click on the button and go to, actually, oh, I might not be able to do that. Arrange? No, there it is. So there's the position. I could have put in precise positions from slide to slide.
Another thing you could have done is put the buttons on the master page and
oh, so I could visually see it?
so they wouldn't move from slide to slide and then blank out the buttons that aren't applicable to that slide.
Okay, he's suggesting I put the buttons on the master slide.
Over the B.
But no, they can't be on,
From there and you leave
they can't be on the master slide because they have to have that Command K done to each one of them separately. They're all different. They're all going to all different places. So yeah, they would have to be replicated. Yeah.
The other thing you could have done is select put all the buttons where you want them, select all, copy and paste on every slide, and then take out the ones that they don't apply to, and then apply a script for the ones that remain.
Yeah, so he's suggesting I could have copied and pasted, put all of them down on all of them, and then done all the assignments. But that assumes that I wrote this whole thing and ordered it perfectly, and then went back and put all the buttons in. That's not quite the process I followed. It was a little bit more chaotic than that. I had other threads I was going to go down here too. Like one of my favorites is the episode or the Podcast Expo where I met Adam Christensen. Another funny thing happened there that turned into yet another adventure is I had gotten a text from Adam. He said, hey, how'd you get from the airport to the hotel? Or from the airport to the hotel. I said, oh, I just took a cab. I texted him back. So later on, I saw him at the, this is at the next Podcast Expo, I guess, because I already knew him. And I went up to him, I saw him, and I went up to him and I said, hey, you know, how'd the taxi work out for you? And he went, and he walked away from me. He just like shook his head and walked away. I was like, man, what a jerk that Adam Christensen is, wow. It wasn't Adam Christensen. It was, and I'm gonna do something here you should never do. I'm going to drive down into my folder. I think I have it here. Is this it? No, that's not it. That's another one. Oh, shoot. Let's see. Hang on. There it is. It's not my fault. It's Tom Merritt. Tom Merritt of the Daily Tech News Show. I mean, you got it. Yeah, I mean, they kind of look alike, right? They look a lot alike. It's not my fault. So I found, later on, I went up to Adam and I was like, oh my God, you're wearing a different shirt. That wasn't you. So everybody whose name I've gotten wrong, Jason and Dan, yeah, I mean, I do this all the time. I mix people up. And the end of the story is I'm now a guest on the Daily Tech News Show. So that all worked out for me. Anyway, any other questions? Yeah.
It seemed to me when you were doing the presentation, you left the cursor on top of one of your live buttons.
Right.
And then you said, well, I have to move this before the slide started doing its animations. Did I misperceive that? Or?
Oh, so he's asking why I said I needed to move the slide, or move my cursor. The one, that was this slide.
Yes.
So had I hit the button, it would have advanced to the next slide. What I had to do was tap on, normally when you're doing a presentation, you just tap anywhere on the slide and the animations occur or whatever. Had I tapped this button, it would have advanced to the next slide.
So you moved it, then you tapped it.
Yeah, so I moved it first. But my big fear, and I didn't do it, so yay me, was that I would tap a slide and it would advance to the next slide. And the next slide isn't necessarily the next slide, right? Because I might be going to slide 48 instead of slide 37. That's the one right after where I am. And I managed to never accidentally do that. And I'm very pleased about that. Oh, because that's the other thing I didn't take the time to do. I could have done it, but think about the complexity of it, is to make a back key on every one of these. So back is different depending on which, so I'd have to have like an S-1 and an E-1 and an R-1. Yeah?
When you were selecting the slide, the option was last view slide. You can use that.
I couldn't quite hear you.
When you were selecting the slide to go to,
Right.
one of the different options, there was previous slide, next slide. The option above the number was last view slide.
Oh, he just said one of the options was last used slide. That might have worked. Yeah, yeah. All right, next time. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so he was saying that it was next slide and previous slide and then the slide number, but I missed one of them said last used slide. That would have been good, yeah, because that would be basically slide -1 of where whatever my path was. I'll have to test that and see if it works. What's that? Oh, breadcrumbs. Yeah, the breadcrumb. I want the previous breadcrumb, exactly.
You only be able to go back one slide doing that. Because once you go back one slide, the last view slide again, it might take you.
Oh yeah, last viewed slide would go somewhere else. Yeah, this might require some experimentation to see what would go wrong. I'm just pleased I got it to go. The only way I knew how to do it would be to jump all the way out or go to the end and let you see everything I was going to do, hit home, go all the way back to home, and then go all the way forward again. So yeah, problematic, but yeah, I'll try that. That's a great tip. I could have put a home button on every slide, just like my escape hatch, get out of jail. But one of the ways I knew when I was done with a thread was there was a home button. So if I could have had a home on the left, maybe. Like a little teeny one, little tiny H. Anyway, it was kind of fun figuring that out, and I thought it made the presentation a little more fun to follow along. So thank you very much for your attention. All right.